Today, I want to talk to you about one of the attributes and contributions that leaders give other people, and that's what makes leadership so important. I would like to talk to you about the fact that leaders lift others. In other words, wherever you see a leader, the people around that leader will always go to higher ground. My friend Johnny Cash, in our time of mentoring and just talking together, constantly brings up to me in my mentoring time with him, John, I have a great desire to help other people and I want to make their lives better for them. And he works really hard at that. And it's one of the things I greatly appreciate about him. Every time I look into his heart is to lift up other leaders. Now, we've heard the expression that it's lonely at the top. But I've always said that a good leader never says that, because think about it for a moment. If you're at the top all by yourself, you didn't lift anybody. You didn't bring anybody to the top with you. In fact, if you're only at the top by yourself, you're really not a leader. Honestly, you're just a hiker. Leaders lift other people. Recently, I was doing a lesson on fulfillment because there are so many people, instead of living a fulfilling life, they lead and live an empty life. And I was trying to distinguish the difference between what is emptiness in a person's life and what makes them feel empty, and what is fulfilling in a person's life and what brings great joy and fulfillment to them. In that lesson, I was talking about that people that live a fulfilling life, they value people and they add value to those people. Now, that's what I'm talking about when I'm saying lifting others. If you as a leader value people and you add value to people, trust me, my friend, without any doubt, you will lift other people. I have spent my life doing that exact thing. In fact, the other day I had someone come and ask me, tell me, they said, a little bit about your journey. How did this happen that you began to be what I would call a leader that lifted other people? Well, honestly, at 75, it's easy for me to understand my life as I look backwards. It was Steve Jobs who said, um, when we look forward, it's hard to connect the dots, but when we look backwards, then it just is kind of natural to see how things just fell in place. In my life, back in 1973, I went to a convention in Waterloo, Iowa, and I heard Charles Tremendous Jones, and he said that I would be the same person I was in 5 years unless I met new people and I read more books. In other words, Charles Tremendous Jones said to me that the people I associate with and the books that I read are going to determine how successful I will be in life. And from that very moment, I determined that I was going to be around great people and I was going to help people become great. I've often said that when you have a great dream and you have a great team, then all of a sudden you can realize everything that you want to accomplish. Now, I've known those who had a big dream and a bad team, and that's a nightmare. So how did I lift up people? How do you lift up others as leaders? I'm going to share with you now some material, some thoughts that really I've never shared with other people before. This is for you. This is for your training. This is for your growth. This is for your development. This is to help you to be a leader that lifts up other people. So how do we do this? How do I lift others? How do you lift others? Number one, I think to lift other people, it starts with you. I think you have to have a desire to become great. You have to have a desire inside of you to do great things. I can still remember as a very young leader in my 20s, I came to the conclusion that I wanted to make a difference. I really did. That I wanted to make a difference in my life. I wanted to make a difference in your life. I wanted to make a difference in the people's lives around me. And I had this desire. It was a passion of mine. Napoleon Hill said, the starting point of all achievement is desire. I believe that with all of my heart. I have found that great people, great leaders, you don't have to motivate them. You don't have to say, hey, get up, get out of bed, get into the game. They already have that passion. They already have that desire. And I did. And so because I had this great desire, this desire to be great, I went to one of my mentors. His name was Elmer. I call him affectionately E.T. He's still alive. He's older than me. He's 90 years old. But he has been a friend and a mentor for many, many years of my life. And so I'm very, very young. I'm in my 20s, and I go to E.T. and I ask him, how do I become great? What he said to me that day was life-changing. And for, 50 years of my life, I've been following those words. Here's what he said. If you want to become great, go to great events. Seek out great people. Ask great questions. Read great books. Find great mentors. And then he said, above all, attempt to do great things. When E.T. told me that 50 years ago, I marked those words. I said, that's exactly what I'm going to do. I'm going to go to great events. I'm going to seek out great people. I'm going to ask great questions. I'm going to read great books. I'm going to find great mentors in my life, and I'm going to attempt to do great things. If you want to lift others, the first thing you want to do is just have a desire inside of you to be great. The second characteristic I think that you need to possess is you need to do what my mentor Elmer Towns told me to do as a very young leader. Go to where great people go. Wow. I have discovered that this is the secret to having a faster pace on my success journey. My mama used to talk to me and say, John, birds of a feather flock together. Average people hang with average people. People that are successful hang with people that are successful. My father knew that. And as I was growing up, he took time to introduce me to great people. Wow. I was in the 7th grade when he took me to meet his long-distance mentor himself, Norman Vincent Peale, who wrote the great book, The Power of Positive Thinking. In Columbus, Ohio, 7th grader, I met Norman Vincent Peale. When I was in the 11th grade, I met E. Stanley Jones, another great man, a great missionary, a friend of Gandhi's, a man that influenced the world, a great writer. Elmer Towns, my mentor, said and taught me at a young age what he called the hot poker principle. The hot poker principle is just very simple. If you have a fire in the fireplace, if you put the poker in the fire or by the fire, it's only a matter of time till it gets hot. If you remove the poker away from the fire, it's only a matter of time till it gets cold. And Elmer said, John, get around hot people, get around great people so you can stay hot, so you can stay passionate. That's exactly what I have done. When I was in my late 20s, I wrote a lesson that has been life-changing for many people about how to create a growth environment. In it, I just simply say, listen carefully, a growth environment is a place where others are ahead of you, where you're continually challenged, where your focus is forward, where the atmosphere is affirming, where you're often out of your comfort zone, where you wake up excited, where failure is not your enemy, where others are growing, where people desire change, and where growth is modeled and expected. Those are the 10 things that make a great growth environment. The other day, when I was preparing this lesson for you, I was looking at those characteristics of a growth environment, and all of a sudden it hit me. 5 of the 10 very essential items to have a growth environment in your life are having great people around you. Others are ahead of you. The atmosphere is affirming. Others are growing. People desire change. Growth is modeled and expected. 5 out of the 10 are specifically about great people. Mark Cole, the CEO of my companies, calls it the power of proximity. He talks about the fact that if you really want to do something great, you've got to be around great people because there is a contagiousness that happens when you're around those type of people. And so I've looked at myself and I've asked myself many times, how did I become great? And I'd have to say, without any doubt, I not only had a desire to be great, but I put myself around great people. And again, that's what's so exciting to me about this program, because you're in these lessons, you're going to be exposed to great people who have great ideas and great thinking that can really help you to become great. In my early years, when I was very young, inexperienced, and not known at all as a leader, my mentors were my books. Back then, we didn't have all the incredible technology that you have today. But I was mentored from afar by books or by tapes that I could listen to. So, if you really want to lift others up, you have to have a desire to be great, and you have to go where the great people go. Where are the great people? Thirdly, if you really want to be great and be a leader that can lift others, you have to do what great people do. Again, many times we look at great people and we say, wow, I would like to have that title. I'd like to have that position. I'd like to have that money. I'd like to have that influence. And we don't realize that all those things that we want are a result of what great people do every day. The things that we don't even see, the behind the scenes, the hidden disciplines that keep people doing the great things every day so that their greatness shows when they're out in public. A book that I grew up on and was mentored on was Stephen Covey's book, The 7 Habits of Highly Successful People. And when people talk to me about doing what great people do, I say, go to that book. And I would suggest you need, if you haven't, you need to read that book. And if you have read the book, you need to practice the 7 habits that Stephen Covey talks about, the things that you have to do to be great. What did he say? He said, number 1, be proactive. In other words, take action. There is no success, none, without action. Nobody ever reflected their way to success. Nobody ever thought their way to success. Nobody ever hoped their way to success. No one with good intentions ever had success. It takes action. Action is always associated with success. Be proactive. Number 2, begin with the end in mind. This is all about intentionality. This is all about seeing the big picture. This is all about don't do something stupid today that'll mess up the long-term journey of your life. Everything that you do, look at your dream, look at your goal, do everything with the end in mind. The third thing that Stephen Covey suggests that we do is to put first things first. In other words, prioritize your life. All leaders know activity is not necessarily accomplishment. I know a lot of busy, hardworking people that are not successful at all. So what we have to do is we have to say, what's the most important? Put first things first. Don't put first things last. Hey, put last things last. Put first things first. Number 4, Stephen Covey says, think win-win. I have lived my life following that principle. If I'm going to work with you, I'm going to ask myself a simple question. What is the win for you and what's the win for me? I never get into any relationship where I win and you're going to lose. Or I'm not going to get in a relationship where you're going to win and I'm going to lose. No, I'm going to get into a relationship where together we both are better. Together, we both win. The fifth thing that Stephen Covey talked about that was so effective is he said, seek first to understand, then to be understood. He talked about listening. He talked about caring for people in such a way that you allow them to tell their story. And you listen and care and are attentively drawing their story out. In other words, if I understand you well, you'll have a desire, because I listen and care, to understand me. But I must, again, as a leader, I must go first. So many times leaders, they just want to be understood. They want to make sure that they got their vision out, they got their directions out, and it's kind of, now listen to me, listen to me, listen to me. But if you really want to lift others and you really want to grow in this area, you don't start with yourself, you start with your people and say, okay, tell me your story. What are your dreams? What is it in your life that you would really like to do that would make a difference in people's life? I love those words. Seek first to understand, then to be understood. The sixth thing that Stephen Covey talks about that is so important for us to, again, be leaders who do what great people do is he talks about synergizing. And if you really read the chapter, it's really about teamwork. It's about coming together. It's what Mother Teresa said when she said, you can do things I cannot do. I can do things you cannot do, and together we can do great things. Synergizing means that we come together as a team. One is too small of a number to achieve greatness. When we synergize, we lead people in a desired vision, but we do it together as a team. The last thing that Stephen Covey said is sharpen the saw. In other words, develop yourself personally. When he said sharpen the saw, he's talking about cutting down trees. And you all know that if I don't stop long enough to sharpen the saw, if it's not the best instrument I can possibly use to cut that lumber, it's not going to cut very well. And so we have to constantly keep sharp. We have to constantly grow. We have to constantly learn. We have to constantly improve our life. Okay, we're talking about how do we become leaders that lift others? And we've talked about so far three things. We've talked about how important it is for us to have a desire to be great. We have talked about go where great people go, and then do what great people do. Now I'm going to talk to you about number 4. Be unforgettable. Be unforgettable. My friend Jack Welch used to talk about getting out of the people pile. You see, in every organization, there are just a lot of people. So how do you and I distinguish ourselves? I mean, how do we get out of the people pile until they see us and they notice us? And what I want to share with you today is something that's very important, and it's just life-changing. If you want to get out of the people pile, just commit your life to living a life beyond expectations. I want you to exceed expectations. I want you to set your bar, your personal bar, your productivity bar, your life conduct bar. I want you to set it high. You see, only 15% of the people in life even meet expectations. So this people pile, it's just got a whole bunch of people that are just average. And 15% exceed expectations or meet expectations. And of those 15% that meet expectations, only 2% exceed expectations. So I want to encourage you in your life to live a life that says, I exceed the expectations of other people around me. In fact, the way I look at it is this. When I'm getting ready to speak for a company, I do a pre-conference call, and one of the questions I ask them is, what are your expectations of me? What do you want to see happen when I come and speak for you? And they tell me, and I write it down. Now, when they give that to me, I look at what I wrote down, And those expectations they have of me, that's not my ceiling. That's my floor. I stand on that. I make sure that's going to be done. Now I ask myself the question, how am I going to exceed expectations? How am I going to be so unforgettable that I'm irreplaceable? And they look and they say, I got to have John back because he truly does make a difference in my life. How am I going to do that? Let's review just for a second. For me to be a leader that can lift other people, I have to have a great desire to be great. I have to go where great people go, do what great people do. I have to be unforgettable, exceed those expectations. And number 5, I have to be greater on the inside than I am on the outside. Wow, this is huge. You see, when we look at successful people, what we normally do is we see what they have accomplished, the tangible things on the outside. But I am here to tell you that greatness begins on the inside first. My wonderful friend, Truett Cathy, was the founder of Chick-fil-A, this incredible, best company to work for in America restaurant chain. When Chick-fil-A was just kind of starting to get momentum, the people around him said, we need to get bigger, we need to get bigger. And Truett Cathy said, no. He said, we need to get better. He said, when we get better, when we improve ourselves, when we get better, the people, the customers, the clients, they'll insist that we get bigger. Our job is to be big on the inside. Our job is to be greater on the inside than we are on the outside. And so what does that mean? Well, that means that I'll be different than most people. For example, many people live a life of scarcity. I live a life of abundance. Most people, in relationships with others, they either take the low road or the middle road. They either kind of, well, if you'll treat me good, I treat you good. You treat me bad, I'll treat you bad. I take the high road. You see, I take the road where if you treat me bad, I'll still treat you good. I will always be bigger in my spirit and my attitude than you. Trust me. I was talking about high road the other day, and a person came up to me at the conference and said, the high road is a toll road, but the price is worth it. When they said that to me, I thought how true that is. I am always going to treat people better than they treat me. I'm always going to live a life of abundance, not scarcity. And I'm going to choose sowing over reaping. I'm always going to sow seeds of goodness into people's life. You see, most people, they get up and they look at life from that day and they say, I wonder what life is going to bring to me today. I wonder what it's going to give me. I wonder what I'm going to get out of life. That's how they think. I never think about reaping. I always think about sowing. In fact, the success of my day is determined by the seeds I sow, not by the harvest that I want to reap. So I'm going to constantly do more for others than they do for myself. I'm going to constantly be greater on the inside than I'm on the outside. Now I'm preparing you. All the things I've given you, I'm preparing you to lift other people. So number 6, live out your great vision. Now, what I mean by living out your great vision, it's one thing to tell others about your vision, but it's another thing to show others your vision. When I tell you my vision, I'm a vision caster. But when I show you my vision, I become a vision character. And when I can show and tell my vision, I become what I call a vision champion. And great people are attracted by great success. So my credibility as a leader isn't what I say I can do, it's what I actually do. So what I do is I bring people with me, the people that I'm mentoring, the people that I'm leading and lifting. I take them with me. I take them with me to have leadership experiences. I say, come and be with me and watch this and observe this. This begins absolutely life-changing. When a person sees the vision that you have created, they buy into it so quickly because now they get to be a participant of that vision. Now I get to the very essence of this lesson. If you want to lift others, you've got to develop great people. When people ask me at 75, what is the number one reason for my success? It's very obvious. I have developed great people in my life. And there are two principles for developing great people. And those two principles are, number one, growth requires people development. I have to spend time developing people. Growing organizations grow people. So growing leaders is at the top of my agenda. And personal development, my own personal growth, precedes the development of others. I want to talk to you about serving others. A great leader serves others. In my 21 Irrefutable Laws of Leadership book, I talk about the law of addition, and the law of addition is that leaders add value to others by serving them. And I am not a positional leader. I try to be a serving leader, which means I don't have people work for me. I have people work with me. I work with people. And we just help each other to grow and to get better ourselves. And I say that because when I was a young leader in my 20s, I heard a man named Zig Ziglar one time from the stage say that if you will help people get what they want, then they'll help you get everything that you want and need in your life. And this was a paradigm shift for me because I was a young leader and I wasn't interested in helping people get what they want. I was interested in people helping me get what I want. So I was talking about my vision and get on my leadership train. And it was all about helping me. And that day I walked out of that session, I thought, I'm doing it wrong. Instead of asking people to serve me, I need to serve them. Instead of asking people to add value to me, I need to add value to them. So how am I going to do that? And how am I going to do that successfully? Well, I heard that almost 50 years ago. And now with 45, 50 years of serving other people, let me tell you what serving others has taught me. Number one, it's taught me to value people. It's taught me to change from this idea, you need me, to go to the idea, I need you. You know, today I'm 75, and I'm incredibly grateful for the people that I have around me because what I've learned is this, that the more that I've served them, the more that I value them. And the more that I value them, the more value they bring to me. This is incredible. Once we understand how servant leadership works, it's just like we'll never go back to any other kind of leadership again. So serving others has taught me, number one, to value people. Number two, serving others has taught me to value teamwork. One of us is not as smart as all of us. In my early days, if I would get an idea, because I was a young leader, I wanted to make sure everybody thought it was my idea, so I wouldn't share it with anybody. I would think about it, I'd work about it, I'd develop a system, a plan, and then I wanted to walk in and I wanted to sit down and say, okay, here's my incredible plan. And so for many years, I didn't do shared thinking, and I didn't value the teamwork. And then one day I realized that if I just took my idea to the people, in just a few hours, they would make my idea better. In fact, now I've done this thousands of times over the last, 3 or 4 decades. I have never taken an idea to my team that after we talked about it and shared it, every time they've made the idea better. They just have. And so when I started really serving people, I just began to value teamwork and see the return on teamwork. The third thing was when I started serving people, I just became greatly fulfilled. And I became greatly fulfilled because I was going now from success to significance, and I teach often success is about what I accomplish, significance, it's all about you. And the moment that I started valuing people, I found that fulfillment comes in living a significant life. It doesn't come in living a life for myself. And so as I served others, I began to value teamwork. I began to be fulfilled in my life. And so I sat down after understanding the value of serving others, and I asked myself a simple question. What questions can I ask myself that would better help and serve you? And so I asked myself questions such as, what do the people need? Well, I didn't know what the people needed. So I went to them and I said, I would like to lead you well. I'd like to serve you well. What do you need? And they began to talk to me about what they needed. I literally have written all my books off of the fact that when I was in my late 20s, I came to the conclusion that if I could help people do 4 things well, if I could really serve them in these 4 areas, they would be very successful. If I could help them develop relationships, if I could help them learn how to equip others, if I could help them have a phenomenal attitude in life, and if I could help them to lead. And so I just took those 4 things, and every book I wrote was either relationships, equipping, attitude, leadership. It was, again, serving and asking myself, well, what do the people need? And then, once you define what the people need, then you say, okay, now how do I meet that need? What do I do? And in the case I just gave you, I started writing books for people. But I started asking questions. I started listening. I started developing what I call heart skills, which are skills that you show people that you truly care for them. And so when I started valuing people and asking these servanthood questions, I just began to ask myself, how can I inspire other people to serve other people? And the answer is very simple, by modeling it. So with my team, I constantly serve them. In fact, it's kind of a joke because when you watch our team together, we're always looking for ways to serve each other. And it's almost like, who's the king of the servers? Who's the king of the serving hill? I did this for you. I did that for you. But it's all in fun. But it's all because we understand that when I started serving people, I started valuing people. I started valuing what teamwork was all about. And I really started to be fulfilled in my life. I think you're going to find that in your servanthood also. I just want to encourage you to learn what I have said and practice it this month and serve people and see if it doesn't bring you maybe a little bit greater sense of fulfillment because you've begun to live this life of significance.
Hey, welcome back. Chris, to get you back, we had to stay in studio for part 2 just to get you back. So for all of you YouTube viewers, yes, that's the same shirt. Chris stayed for an extra session today to do part 2.
I think really what happened was he saw the great content that John had for us today, and he knows that you and I don't stay on time. And so he said, well, instead of this being 1 lesson, we better break it up into 2. So he just cut us in half. What I love about where John's taken us, and even your comments as we opened up today in today's lesson, is use the word guide, and John's used it before too. And as a leader, that's so much of what we ought to be. Not only guiding them professionally, but also personally, we believe in that, but also helping guide them to learn, to be developed, to facilitate conversations and situations. And so this is, again, like Mark said, if you did not listen to part 1, I want to encourage you to do that because there's some really good content in points 1 and 2 in part 1. Today in part 3, John jumps right in and he talks about, and this is so true for all of us. I know even internally as he was teaching this and you and I were sitting here taking notes, I go, oh yeah, no, I want to be in a safe environment, especially coming through what we've experienced over the last couple of years. So many people want to be heard. They want to make sure they're seen. They want to be in a safe place for many reasons. But as a leader, we want to be able to create that around content, around what we're facilitating, around what they're learning, around what we're learning. And I've seen you do this many times. Leaders go first. And one of the first things you do when we're learning something new or you're teaching us something new is like, hey, let me tell you where I messed this up.
Yeah.
And this is what I learned from it. And you almost kind of just take our walls down. You go, man, okay, so we're going to leave. We're going to go after this inside the organization, personally or professionally. And it's okay if we mess up because you went first and you lowered that walls for us. Talk a little bit about how you create that environment in our team as a leader of teaching, of communicating, facilitating things that are adding value to us, but giving us permission to experiment, to try, to fail. Talk a little bit about that from your leadership lens.
Yeah, every podcast, some of you may know this, you've picked up on it by now, we kind of put a standout statement before every podcast. And it's just kind of the overarching thesis of what we're trying to drive. And today's is great teachers don't teach, they inspire. And I think the biggest thing for me is when I am assessing a difficult conversation or a particularly challenging time in my leadership, or perhaps one of the greatest accomplishments I've ever had professionally, one of my desires is, with my passion, we'll talk a little bit more about that later, but is to use inspiration to get others believing that they too can experience success, that they too can get through this difficult time, that they too have the ability to move in a direction that is positive in its nature. And I think going back, Chris, to you asking me, okay, so what are we talking about here when teachers take risk, when teachers create a safe environment? So how do you create the safe environment? How do you create a place to inspire, back to our thesis? And I am constantly assessing myself as a leader more on inspiration than I am on content. Now, I haven't forgotten, those of you that have been following John for years as I have not forgotten the difference between a motivational teacher and a motivational speaker.
That's right.
We know this. A motivational teacher takes something simple and makes it complicated, right? Sorry for all you teachers out there. A motivational speaker, actually takes things that are complicated and makes it simple.
That's good.
And so what you and I need to realize as leaders, and all of our podcast listeners, is we have a responsibility to create the environment for which we want to teach, or for which we want to take people on a journey with us. I was talking about this before as we just kind of put some prep thoughts together. I was reminded of a complete leadership colossal mess up that I had recently. I mean, just absolutely, it dotted the I on everything a leader could do to mess up. Now, I have to tell you in podcast land that Jake, our producer, and Jared, our content vice president here in the both of them are in the studio, and they keep cautioning me not to keep being vulnerable. They say I've been too vulnerable lately. They don't like vulnerability. They like polish and faking things out. And I'm just kidding. I'm giving them a hard time because they said we were talking about something else and they did that. But I'm getting ready to be vulnerable with you again. Okay, so Jake, Jared, shut your ears. Okay. I'm in this meeting. I've got brand new team members. In fact, the meeting, we're merging two companies. The meeting was literally half and half. Existing people that have worked with me for years and people that this was literally their first meeting ever with me. Okay, get the picture. I've got people that know me at the heart level. They have watched me stumble and fumble and mess up hundreds of times and come back and be authentic like I'm trying to be now. And then we have other people that the jury is out if this redheaded guy is going to even be worth listening to, much less following. In this meeting, I had an individual that I'm working with to develop their leadership acumen. There's a passion that they have to lead at this level and a realization that they've got a gap to close. So we're working on it, and I'm doing this, and I'm pulling no punches. Sometimes I go, hey, that was a really bad move, and then I move on, trusting the relational equity that we have, okay? This particular leader decided in the middle of a very important meeting to go off point with my agenda. Just completely off point. No harm, no foul. That happens hundreds of times, Chris. You probably in that same meeting did it. But I'm not working with you the same level for the same reason.
Right.
In this moment, I realized that they had created a challenge for something that I had been working with them one-on-one, and I decided to highlight it in front of everybody, the infraction they made to leadership awareness. Now, was I right? Yes, the leadership awareness was not there. I was trying to take the meeting here. They went there, and they did it publicly. And I could have handled it 53 different ways. The way I chose to handle it was call them out in front of everybody. Their people, new people. Yeah. This is a very prominent person that was a champion for me in this room that I completely embarrassed. Now, let's go back to what John says. We never learn from that which embarrasses us. Number one, I devalued another human being.
That's right.
Let's just call a party foul there against our very values. Number two, if my mental thought at that moment was to teach them how off that was, I can never teach somebody from a place of embarrassment. Mm-hmm. And as a leader, we've got to always make sure that there are some lessons that need to be learned one-on-one and very few lessons that need to be learned by one in front of many.
That's good.
Because it creates an embarrassing situation, and no lesson is transferred in an embarrassing situation.
Yeah, I am smiling not because the situation was not serious, because it is. I'm smiling because, man, I've found myself there before. And the way that we can immediately disconnect with our people, John talks about connecting with our people to be able to teach them, to facilitate content, is to embarrass them. You want to disconnect with someone on your team, then go ahead and embarrass them.
That's exactly right.
And I'll tell you this, I have a tendency at times, and Joel Manby kind of hits this, one of our incredible thought leaders talks about it a lot. Never, ever, ever is there a reason to make a joke in a meeting, in a group setting, at someone else's expense, even if you're not making a point, because what does that do? That draws attention to them and embarrasses them. And, so, man, that's such a good point. When you were facilitating content, you were teaching, you were opening up the room for a certain situation, and it happened. But what I love about it that you didn't share was immediately after the meeting.
I apologize.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's okay, right? Like that you did that. That is awesome to be able to go first, just like I talked about. So you made that mistake. One of the things that I think about is because we've been around facilitation of content for so long, is that there are tips, there are techniques, there are different personalities that are going to be in a room. You knew his personality, and it didn't surprise you. Matter of fact, you just reacted.
I did.
You weren't surprised by it, but you reacted. And so one of the things that we've done in helping leaders with content, but more importantly is to facilitate it, is to make sure you're aware of what are the competencies to facilitate a great meeting, great content. What are some of the tips to stay away from? What are some of the techniques to open up the room? All those things. We've just been blessed to be around for so many years of content, and seeing John do it and our facilitators. And so we worked through that. And we talked about this on part one.
We did.
We want you to go back and listen to it. If you didn't listen to it, we talked about Mark's vision, John's vision, starting a facilitator program for those that are in communities and are leaders inside organizations that want to add value. And if that's you, maybe you don't have time to go listen to session one, we won't be offended, but I want to encourage you to do that. I want to encourage you to go to maxwellpodcast.com/facilitator, fill out the form there, and we'll love to share more information with you. But I only share that right there because one of the lessons that we've taught, Perry Holly and I, on video was how to make sure you create a safe environment so that everybody, your goal is to bring the brilliance out in the room.
Right.
And that's what you were trying to do.
Yep.
And you may have stifled it for a little bit right there because of that comment. And we all fall into that, and we want to be able to help you with that if you're listening to us.
Yeah, for all of us that really want to better our environments and improve people along the way, as well as grow our influence, there is an art to creating safe environments, to facilitating, to use your word. There is an art to that. I think back, and this is one of the things that we teach in this program. I'm so glad that you re-mentioned that this week, what we talked about last week. But there is an art that I've watched John do that people think that he's on stage speaking to 10,000 people, 5,000 people, 250 people. He is really facilitating a safe environment to where more people at different levels of leadership can listen to a Maxwell lesson and apply it to their level than any other communicator out there.
Yeah.
You know why? Creates a safe environment.
Yeah.
It's okay to feel the weight of the world with multi-million-dollar companies on my shoulder, and it's okay to be an entry-level telesales representative like I was at the beginning. Both can listen to a lesson and begin that leadership journey because John just really, truly creates this safe environment.
I want to bring up a point that you just brought back to my memory. So you and I had the privilege of being at one of our favorite events every year in Exchange just a couple months ago. And you and I were in a meeting prior to that, and we had planned an activity that a lot of people had a lot of angst about.
Yep.
And maybe even embarrassed to say, I don't want to do that. I'm fearful of what could come of that. All these questions that they would have been embarrassed about. And so you and John helped coach me through how to create a safe environment as we opened up the day and the meeting. And so I'll never forget this recap that I had with John. You were not there yet. You were coming in later that evening. And so I talked to John after I had that meeting and used some of your coaching and John's coaching on what to communicate to create this safe environment. And he said something to me, gave me a lot of great compliments, but I asked him, I said, what is one thing you would have done differently? And he said, that's a good question. He said, what I would have done was I would have just said, you know what? I feel that way too. Hey, I've been concerned about admitting that maybe I am a little fearful of this activity, and just to be able to kind of sit back in it with them. That way they don't feel embarrassed for admitting, because he said, what do they do as soon as you go, hey, I was a little concerned about this? They all go, oh yeah, me too. And they're not embarrassed to be able to do that. And he just has, you're so right. He has so many techniques and tips that he uses to create, not just when he's leading our team, because he facilitates conversation, best ideas win, all that stuff, but when he is talking to a crowd. And I wasn't necessarily 200 people in the room. I wasn't asking to facilitate a conversation, but he was helping me understand how he facilitates that conversation to create a safe environment.
Well, and just to put a loop on that, it was an experience with the Navy SEALs.
Yeah.
Special ops of the military. And it was an exercise early morning on the beach in San Diego in what was the coldest day of 2022.
Yes, so bad.
There were every dynamic that we gave. And Chris, the way that you did create a safe environment, number one, 100% of the 150 people showed up to be in that environment. And I'd already had phone calls for weeks saying, I'm not going to show up at that. I'm not going to show up at that. You created an environment to where everybody showed up. Not only that, everyone had a takeaway, and everybody considered that one of their top experiences of a 3-day event because we intentionally created a safe environment for that. That's a brilliant illustration under this point that you can make the most audacious challenge, the challenge that people that had been coming to Exchange for years was dreading this more than anything I'd ever heard in feedback.
Yeah.
And yet we created with great intentionality an environment to where people felt safe enough to
take a risk.
And loved it.
Yeah, take a risk, and then they ended up learning something from it. So it just came to mind when you were saying that. And I wanted to share it with our audience. All right, let's move on to what could be our most passionate discussion in regards to when you and I are having this conversation. So John talks about in point 4 that you have to exude passion as well as purpose. We talked about you got to do it in a way of being very authentic to how you're wired. And yet, at the same point in time, you got to manage that a little bit, because some of us may come across with a little bit of too much passion. Talk about when you hear John teach this principle, you teach with passion. It's in you, right? And I think it's in you because you're a product of the product you believe. John talks about it here in these last 4 points of point number 4. Everything there aligns directly with where you're at as a leader. Talk a little bit about how you manage that passion of yours when you're teaching and facilitating content with people and our teams.
Well, number one, let me say this. You asked, what did I think or how did I feel when John was teaching that? I went, yes, touchdown.
That's right.
In fact, I thought about 3 recent occasions that John has told me to modify my tempo and emotion from stage to be a little bit more effective. And I thought about capturing my notes for all of you on watching on YouTube. I print out the notes at the bonus resource section as well. And so I thought I've circled it because I've got to go show John that I still can be passionate.
That's right.
So number one, the first thing I did was like, yes, it's my best birthday present ever. But I'll tell you this. I still stand by what I told you right before we started recording after we listened to John. As a highly passionate person, you do the values card exercise with clients all over. When I did that, one of my top 5 values is passion. Growth is another one. Passion is everything to me. Mm-hmm. If I can't get excited about it, nobody wants to be around me. Trust me, I'm a boring person. But if I can get excited about what I'm doing, it overcomes me. Well, what that means is when I'm passionate about something that we need to do and we're not measuring up, we're coming up short. Something happens. Something's a distraction. My passion is portrayed as intensity.
Yeah.
And we had Liz Wiseman on here this year, and Liz talks about the book Maximizer, about a passion that can also be a minimizer, or a maximizer's strength can be a minimizer liability. And that's certainly true for me under passion. I've had people that worked alongside me. Nobody works for me, but worked alongside me for 10 years, 15 years, that I'll get passionate about something. It comes across to them as intensity, and they'll go, is something wrong with me? Are you mad at me? Is something? I'm going, have we not worked long enough together that you know I would tell you if I'm displeased, if I'm frustrated? No, I got to get there. Even those closest to you can misread passion if you're not aware of your audience. That's why John says great teachers exude passion as well as purpose. Right. And there's sometimes that I really am frustrated with where we are. Because my passion is so strong, if I don't give purpose to the frustration, if I don't slow down and give context to why my frustration is there, it will be received as displeasure, as demeaning, as unhappy, as
you name it,
terminal,
negative,
everything that you can imagine if I don't slow down and couple my passion with purpose. So when I am frustrated, I always tell myself, Mark, give context on why this is frustrating. It's slower for some. I've seen some people go, oh my gosh, can you get to the point? I already know there's a hammer coming, but can you get to the point? And I always have to discipline myself. Yeah. Slow your passion down in moments of frustration or shortfall and give context before you emulate passion, because it'll be taken as intensity. I love my passion. I wouldn't trade anything for it. I love it. I love growth. That's another high value of mine. I wouldn't trade those things. They are the things that make me unique. Mm-hmm. But being wise with those are a difference maker in the 2 points today. Point number 1, create a safe environment. Yeah. Point number 2, do it with purpose. Don't just be passionate without purpose, because then you're just a fanatic. And we all know what fans are, right? They're fanatics with no sense of reality. Yeah. And so I don't want to have no sense of reality in the things that I am passionate about, because then I become a fanatic.
Yeah. I think, and I knew exactly almost every word that you were going to just, we've worked together for a long time. And I think there's also the other side of that. As we're kind of wrapping up, I want to talk about the other side of it, because people hear about your passion all the time. And one of the things that we're learning in organizational development and the companies we're working with is that one of the top 4 reasons people stay at organizations or join organizations is because there's meaningful work, right? Yeah. And with that is the purpose side of things. And so what I want to just challenge our listeners or our viewers that are joining us today is that maybe you feel like you're not as passionate. That would be me, right? I communicate in a different way. I don't have as much passion as Mark does, but the purpose, we are directly aligned in the purpose of what we do. So at times I've got to recognize that, and I have to ramp up my passion so that it communicates everything that John talks about here in these 4 points at the bottom, right? Do I believe it? 100%. Has it changed me? Yes. Do I believe it will change others? Absolutely. And have I seen it change others every single day in what we get to do? And if that's the case, then I got to up my passion a little bit so that it aligns with how big the purpose is. And oh, by the way, we want our team or those that we're facilitating content or leading and teaching, we want them to buy in and understand we have meaningful work. It's got to come from us. And so there's an other side of that I just wanted to share with you in regards to that, because you're always very vulnerable and sharing kind of where you're at. But also there's another side to that, and I want our listeners to be aware of that, because you have to manage that. It's got to be a balance.
You do. It's why charismatic leaders, we've heard of the charisma of a leader. The charismatic leader draws people in and challenges them and inspires them, and they get to moving. And you've got to have the purpose behind the charisma. But let me tell you this, you've got to have charisma behind the purpose too, which is what you're saying.
Yes.
And so a great charismatic leader a lot of times fizzles out.
because they're just up for the hype. They're just up for the moment. They're just up for the excitement. And then the purpose does not sustain them beyond the inspiration. It doesn't sustain them through a change, through something difficult.
Right.
Yet at the same time, I'm glad you brought this up. I've seen a lot of people with great purpose not able to mobilize anybody because they can't find within them the charisma, the passion, the ability to draw people in to their purpose. And I would challenge you, I would challenge all of our podcast listeners to not call passion a personality trait. Don't say I'm introverted. I don't show my passion.
Yeah.
No, that's an excuse because you are passionate. Just maybe you're passionate about your alone time. Maybe you're passionate about just having some me time with your family or not even with your family. You get passionate. Find within you, and John's given us great places to find the process of building fire and building passion. You said it, but let me say it again. Do I believe it? Is it core to who I am? Has it changed me? Truly has it changed you? And don't just answer that with a quick check. How? How did it change you? Because when you find the how it changed you, you'll find the way to passionately communicate the impact of it. So I love this question. I'm not taking away from John at all. Yeah. Has it changed you? But go just one step further.
That's good.
How? And when you realize that how, now I can stand in front of people and talk about how this has made a difference in my life. Do I believe it will change others? Was it just a personal thing? Or were you giving this opportunity or this change for the benefit of others? And then finally, have I seen it change others? And when I can see the multiplier effect of change that happened in my life first and then others, it truly is fuel to me. I'm ready to go challenge some of the people with it.
What I love about this and what you were just talking about is when you go through and really answer these 4 questions, and to your point, go deep on each one of the questions, out of that is going to come the authentic reason and your authentic passion and your authentic purpose, because if you dig into these, it's going to give you real life examples. I'm throw it back to you to let you close up. There's one quote I want to share. This 2-part lesson that Mark and I covered for you. Great leaders are great teachers. What a great lesson it was from John. And I saw this quote that I just want to share as we kind of wrap up and throw it back to you. It was by Jack Welch. And he said, as a leader, you have to have a teachable point of view. You have to have one. So we're talking about passion.
Yeah.
What a great quote to kind of wrap up with saying, you've got to have a point of view. You have to have something you're willing to come and teach. And when you do that, all 4 points that John gave us over these 2 lessons will absolutely just come out of you. They'll live out authentically as you lead your team or communicate to your team.
Yeah, we talked about this on both lessons, and I'm going to bring it back up here because I'll put it in the show notes. But we talked about this idea of facilitating. Of really, and I know it's great leaders are great teachers, but it could have been great leaders are great facilitators because so much of what we do is visible. So much of the change that we have in others is a visual implication or a visual opportunity for people to see that change. And so for all of us that are wanting to better our game, better our leadership game, better our teaching game, better our facilitating lane, get into a community, get into a disciplined approach. And as we kind of launch into 2023, my challenge to all of us is to learn to be a better teacher. Now, you can call that a coach, you can call that a communicator, you can call that a facilitator, but be a better demonstrator of what works.
That's great.
And that's the challenge.
Well, today's topic is how leaders move from good to great. And there's a book, about good to great. We're going to talk today a little bit about how do leaders do that? How are you a good leader? Are you a great leader? How do you move the needle to become a great leader? There's so many factors that really distinguish a good leader from a great leader. And some of the research that we've done and Perry's looked at by Jack Zenger and Joe Folkman, some of the factors are improve communication effectiveness, encourage others. We talk about that on here, to grow and to improve, be a role model, be a champion for your team, recognize when change is needed. Otherwise, you'll become irrelevant. And then finally, the last one we have on here is improve your ability to inspire and motivate those that are in your influence.
Lots of good stuff. And Dr. Zinger and Dr. Folkman doing this research, what they did was they took 360-degree feedback data and looked the critical skills of leaders who are progressing most in their leadership, and they pulled these topics out. The one that I thought, and it's so key to what we talk about anyway, that I thought we should maybe go a little deep on today was about communication effectiveness. I think how you communicate really affects your reputation as a leader. And I want to get practical.
I love it.
So we'll talk about some of the concepts, but how do we actually get practical about that? And I'd like you to walk away from this time you invest with other day to 1 or 3 things that you can work on between now and with working with your team. So
that's
is that okay with you?
Yeah, absolutely. Love that. So the first way to increase communication effectiveness is to become a better listener.
Okay, hang on a minute. I just heard with those radios clicking off, and
that's right. That's right. No one wants to do that.
I know. They all think I'm a great listener. Were you kidding me?
Yeah.
I'm a fantastic listener.
As my wife says all the time, right? I know you hear me. You're just not listening to me. So I think that there is room for all of us. And what's really key about this is that we often ask a question in some of our training, and we say we play this "Would you rather" game in essence. What's more important, to be a better communicator or an effective listener? And then we challenge them. We say, well, whichever one you pick, right? You have to pick this or that. You can't use the other word as you're describing why you picked the answer that you did. And it's always fun because especially when you get to this one and you talk about communication and everybody's right, it's a trick question. They go, well, I can't do that because they're one and the same. Listening is part of communication, and they're spot on, and we do it and we have fun with it. And we talk about how, really there's a two-way pathway in regards to communication. And that second pathway is to really become a better listener. You can be a great communicator, but if you're not listening to what you need to communicate, then it's not going to be very effective. Or vice versa. You can be a great listener, but if you don't have the ability to communicate. And so I love that we're going to dive into this and really unpack how do we increase our communication effectiveness. And the first one is to become a better listener.
Well, I find that listening is the number one way to show you value someone. You're giving something you can't get back, which is time to do that. I think when a leader invests time in actively listening to their people, that it demonstrates respect. You begin to understand team members' points of view. You begin to understand how they think. I just think that when you begin to truly appreciate a team member's perspective, you do that through, you can add so much to your own thinking by just listening and asking good questions and listening actively to what your team members are telling you. So most people think they're better listeners than they really are, as we were joking about a minute ago. So I really wanted to get practical about, are there some things, even if you think you're okay listening, do you think you could get better? I know I could. Yeah. And so what are some of those ideas? And I thought we could bat that about.
I think that when you become intentional about improving your listening skills, it will absolutely increase your connection with people, your influence with people. We joke all the time about our spouses who are our only 2 listeners to the podcast about how you and I could do a much better job of listening. And I think it's something that if we all slowed down and we remove distractions, we could all get better at. But man, we live in a time and a pace where things are moving faster than they've ever moved before. Social media and devices are everywhere, and it's a problem. I even think about the fact that I have a couple of nephews that are staying with us this week, and we love it. We have fun with them, and so I begin to watch the difference in generations and the influences that are in their life take away from their ability to listen. And so, man, I think this is going to be something as we move forward in organizations that we need to continue to focus on. And so here are a couple of things practically to really look at. We're just talking about electronic devices. Put your phone away when you're having a conversation with somebody. There's nothing worse than having a conversation with somebody and their phone is right there and they keep glancing at their phone and it's buzzing and keep going off. Man, if it's gonna be doing that, that's not a problem. just try to put that away. Remain in eye contact with the individual. Have that connection with them while you're listening. Give them your complete attention. I'll never forget when I was much younger, someone said the greatest thing that you could do is when you're listening to somebody is for them to think, holy cow, there's a lot of stuff going on right now, and it seems like nothing else matters but our conversation, because you're giving them complete attention. And then don't interrupt them. Oh man, this is one of the things that just bothers me, is that when I am speaking, or I am watching a conversation and somebody just keeps interrupting a conversation, allow them to finish that. And then finally, take notes from what you're hearing from them. I'll never forget, I was at an event one time, and John was speaking, and so we were there. It was a client of ours, and it's a CEO of a very large company. And John was interviewing this CEO on leadership up on stage, and John was asking the questions and then just feverishly taking notes, listening intently, but taking notes. And so we were on the ride home, to the airport, and I said, John, talk to me a little bit. I haven't seen you do that before. Talk to me a little bit about what was behind you taking notes and during that interview. And he said, oh, I'm working right now on becoming a better listener. I'm looking at becoming better engaged. And when I find myself having to think about what they're saying to be able to take notes, it makes me listen better. And I thought, that's interesting. And so taking notes allows you to do that. The other thing that I think is key here is that, yes, this will help you from a communication standpoint, but all of these things that we have laid out here, they're going to add value to the person that's talking to you. Mm-hmm. They're going to think, man, I'm important. I'm engaged in this conversation. So just some practical ways to do that to improve your listening.
I listened to you talk about, put my phone away, but you also need to master your wrist. I am so tired of people.
Oh, that's so good.
While I'm talking to someone, they look at their watch, but they're not checking the time, although they may be, and which sends me a very bad message.
Yeah,
but
it may be worse, yeah.
I don't have to pull out my phone. I can just look at my wrist, because that's where all my, oh no, don't do that. And I was also, the skill of curiosity is one that many leaders need to work on, is that when someone's talking to me, can I become curious about I'm curious. What is the point they're trying to make? I'm curious. How does this apply to what we're talking about? I'm curious. And it just makes me a little bit deeper in my thinking and listening. And then also, I got some coaching on this, was I'm trying to formulate, instead of my response to what you're saying, I'm trying to formulate what's the best question I can ask when you're done. And thought, before I give my response, I need to ask one question. It could be a follow-up, it could be something, but I also like little phrases that help me. I use, tell me more. What happened next? And then what did you do? And most people are just floored that you would encourage them to keep talking, because they're used to people waiting for them to take a breath so they could jump in and talk. And instead I said, well, tell me more. Yeah. What happened next?
I also hear you say quite a bit lately, which I love, which is I have a point of view on that. What's your point of view?
I love that.
Right? And I love that. I love how you position that so that you can continue to listen more what they're doing.
Another way, improving communication effectiveness and raise your leadership influence, become intentional about your nonverbals, like body language, facial expression, tone of voice, all the ways that people are reading you as they're communicating. We talk about you're always making people feel something. What is it you make people feel? So when someone's talking to you, or when you're talking to someone, let's keep it on listening. Someone's talking to you. What are you doing with your face? What are you doing with your body language? Are you facing them? Are you facing the door? Are you rolling your eyes? Are you get your hands on your hips? There's positives and negatives about all that, but I think it really affects so much about how people feel. Are they being heard, or are you just tolerating and waiting for your time to speak?
Yeah, this is so good for me personally, just to even go through this, because I'll get lazy at times listening, and I know this, but maybe my actions don't necessarily show that. And so again, we're in the leadership space. This is what we do every day. We're in the communication space, and yet you're challenging me with some of the things that we're talking about here today. And so as you're listening to this podcast, I hope that you're being challenged as well to become a better listener. One other thing in regards to this is, do you have empathetic communication style? Mm-hmm. you guys know what I'm talking about. There are those that do and those that don't when it comes across that way. And empathy in your communication means that you have the ability and you can relate to the individual, and maybe not exactly what they're going through, right? But you can get into that place with them, and you can be empathetic during a conversation. And when you do this, it no doubt increases your ability to connect with people, and then will increase your influence as a leader. When you were just talking about mind your face, I love it when you say that, right? Like what is that face telling people? Yeah. I was having this conversation just recently, within the last week, with a leader, and we were talking about, as conversations happen, the facial expressions will change. And somebody said to this individual, like, what's going on with the face? Like, and he said back to, we've worked together for how long? Like, this is just, and so they kind of started laughing about it. And then he said, oh, let me tell you another funny story about kind of the mind your face as you're talking about this and listening. He said that some of his team want the masks to be a policy of what they have to wear while they're working, because it covers his face and they don't have to look at his facial expressions while he's listening or communicating to the team. That's the power of what you're talking about here in connecting through communication. And whether you have empathy or not is mind your face. Do you smile? Do you welcome people? Are you approachable or are you not?
Yeah, empathy versus sympathy.
Yeah. Oh,
can I feel for you, or do I feel sorry for you? That people can tell if you're relating to them. Another great way to improve your communication effectiveness was to master this skill. I call it a skill of providing regular feedback to those you work with. And when you provide constructive feedback, you communicate that you care about me, that you want to see me grow and improve. And I think, unfortunately, many leaders shy away from this because they fear the conflict it might cause. They don't want to give bad news. I don't know I've heard many reasons for this, but done correctly, I believe that feedback can be your friend. Is a great way to really find the greatness in other people. And so when you say my communication style, if you expect that when you're with me and we're performing in our role, that I'm going to give you feedback and that I expect feedback from you, do you think that raises my reputation as a leader? I think so. I think people turn to expect, say, Perry, what'd you think? And that's when I'll use, well, I have a point of view, but what did you think? Because I want to hear what they think first, but get practical on that one.
I love that. So let's talk about this feedback. We've all heard of the feedback sandwich, right? Like, and the reason that we really do it, and this is so good, is that we really do that because it makes us feel better about giving the feedback.
That's what I've learned, yes.
They know what you're doing, by the way, right? Yeah. And so they probably have their guard up even more and they're not even listening.
And explain the feedback sandwich.
So where you end up giving somebody something positive, then some constructive feedback, and then you close with a positive comment.
And we can get out as quickly as possible.
And then you get out as quickly as possible.
Now I feel better about myself.
Yeah, that's right. And so, man, I gave him 2 positive things, 1 negative. And so to your point here is that, man, yeah, absolutely. I think that is more for you than them. So I've heard you teach and talk about getting away from the feedback sandwich and talking more about a feedback conversation.
That's right.
And the feedback conversation goes like this. As close to an event that you've witnessed as possible as a leader, share something that you thought the person did well, then share something you think they might have done better, and then ask the question, what you were talking about a minute ago, which is, what did you think about that? Mm-hmm. So you're creating this dialogue versus giving statements on that sandwich, and you're inviting them to have a conversation. And that is a much different approach to a topic than just having the feedback sandwich.
It's worked amazing for me is that, hey, that sales call, I thought you did a great job on engaging the client, the prospect in a conversation. One area I thought you could have improved on with how you presented our value proposition. What do you think? And the salesman looks right at me and says, no, I thought it was great. What, are you kidding me? I go, well, I thought some confusion on the customer's face and I was just observing, but maybe I'm wrong. How did you see it? And he goes, well, now that you mention it, I did get a little tangled up and I was very vague on a couple of things and I really wasn't sure how to. I said, well, tell me, how can we how could we have done it differently? And now we're in a beautiful place. I'm having
That's
a great
great.
conversation. And it actually, the salesman, what salesman ever did this is, hey, would you do a role play with me on that? Nobody ever asked for a role play.
Yeah.
I thought, yeah, let's role play that for a moment. How could give me the value prop to do that? So, another area I think can improve your reputation as a leader and increase your influence and increase your communication is, and we talk about it a lot here, but I think it really applies, is those 3 questions that every follower, every person you're listening to is asking about you while you're leading, while you're influencing them. Do you remember the 3 questions?
No.
Okay.
I'm not listening.
You do.
I'm just kidding. Yeah, absolutely. So what they want to know is, hey, are you going to help them? Do you care about them?
Yep.
And can they trust you?
Yeah, love these.
And this is a staple of John and really when he talks about leadership and connecting with people. And so these are a great way to frame your question. Now, what we want you to know is, man, if you can answer yes, or these questions are being answered yes about your leadership, then your communication is in a pretty good place, and you have the ability to increase your influence and your reputation as a leader. The getting practical behind this and why we put this in here is, if the answer to any of those 3 questions is no, then dig into that. Why is it no? Why is it that it is no? What can you be doing or working on to move that from a no to a yes? They're simple questions, and it's a simple answer, yes or no. If it's yes, hey, keep trudging, keep getting better. But if it's no, we really want you to kind of unpack and look into that.
Yeah, fantastic. And then finally, I just thought that, John's new book out on the 16 undeniable laws of communication, I was really taken by a truth in one of the laws there. It was that the law of credibility, that, great communicator knows that you're not the main attraction. It's all your communication is about others. And if you make it about yourself, if you're talking in a way that makes it about you, you're not making it meaningful for others. So I thought for me that was a great reminder, is that in my communication, is it about others? Am I talking to others? Am I listening with respect to others? Lots of things that make up a great communicator, but being credible in your communication by the life you live and the way that you present yourself, and then you make it about others, goes a long way.
Goes a long way. Well, as we wrap up, remember, we started this by talking about how leaders move from good leadership to great leadership. And I love that you said, hey, let's just take one and let's get really practical. What's interesting is that one, when we work with organizations, we go through a discovery process, and no doubt about it, in the top 3 every time, and you know this, you've been on a lot of discovery calls, is, man, listen, we got to get better at communication as leaders. We have leaders that don't do a good job of communicating. As an organization, we don't do a good job of communicating. So here were just a couple of very practical, simple ways. Go back, listen, have a little bit of an assessment, check yourself on these areas that we brought to you. And I promise you, if you work on becoming a more effective communicator by some of the tips that we gave you, you will go from being a good leader to a great leader.
Welcome to the Maxwell Leadership Executive Podcast, where our goal is to help you increase your reputation as a leader, increase your ability to influence others, and increase your ability to fully engage your team to deliver remarkable results.